Welcome to Unit 9, Seminar 3. This particular lesson will deal with the changes in the teenage brain during adolescence, which you've already addressed with the teenage brain quiz, and also models of moral development, which is what we'll focus on the most. So the first thing I want to look at is just to review briefly the brain changes that happen during adolescence. We've already talked about the fact that that babies are born with many neurons, and you can see over here that as the child grows, that the neurons form more and more connections. But as the child moves from 7 years old to 15, so through the end of traditional childhood into puberty, what happens is that the brain actually prunes any unused neural connections. So there may be connections that were formed 3, 4, 5, 6 years old that are no longer pathways that are used. And those are actually trimmed to make other pathways more efficient. So we can see from this particular slide, and you can take the time to pause and read it more closely, that as you actually grow up, you have less gray matter density in your brain, which seems kind of strange. It seems counterintuitive, but in fact, that's what happens. And you prune until your early 20s. And then, of course, that's when the prefrontal cortex finally develops and gives you sort of more control over emotions and behavior. So you're growing myelin, your nerve connections are getting quicker, but you're also losing quite a few and you're becoming more specialized. So one of the things that you should have looked at when you read the article and took the teenage brain quiz is this issue: if teenage brains are not mature, should teenagers be permitted to drive? And of course, this question kind of revolves around this idea of 16 versus 18, both of which are teenagers. 2/3 of Americans actually favor raising the driving age, but it's very hard to do politically because many people have a need for teenagers to drive, to get to work, to be able to help people, to transport children, and other reasons. So in most of the world, of course, the driving age is a little bit older and the drinking age is younger. And in the United States, we have a younger drinking age or a younger driving age, but an older drinking age. So obviously there's room for quite a bit of disagreement about that. So we're going to move on to a few of the other things that happen in adolescence. One is the development of social awareness. You're able to, of course, at a much younger age, have a theory of self and be able to, a theory of mind, and be able to identify what someone else is feeling and thinking. But during adolescence, that social awareness grows and you start to have a better sense of your own thinking, be able to actually practice metacognition and think about what you're thinking, think about how you learn, work on strategies to improve your own thinking and learning. You're also better able to understand what other people are thinking and what other people are thinking about you. Teenagers also start to be able to develop this idea of how to reach ideals, and they become more critical of society, more critical of their parents, more critical of things that have not been accomplished, which in childhood tends to be ignored, but that's part of that growing social awareness. Piaget believed that adolescents could handle abstract problems, right? Formal operations, being able to think hypothetically, being able to think about abstract notions like good and evil and truth and justice, and arrive at their own conclusions. Kohlberg, another theorist, actually sought to describe moral reasoning from early childhood all the way into adulthood. So he wanted to actually test this, and he spent many years posing moral dilemmas to people. And he was interested not so much in their answer to the dilemma, a yes or no answer, but in their reasoning. So he wanted to see how does a young child decide whether a person could break an unjust law? How does a teenager decide that? How does an adult decide that? So what are the processes? And he identified 3 major stages of moral development: before age 9, from 9 into early adolescence, and then adulthood. And he labeled these pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional. So I'll walk you through each of these a little bit so you can have a better understanding of each stage. So Kohlberg's pre-conventional stage, which would be up to about age 9, and of course, again, we're talking about continuity versus these stages or steps. So there's some dispute over whether there's really a cutoff at age 9. But a pre-conventional morality would be the kind of morality that is very behaviorist. Moral decisions are made on the basis of either avoiding punishment or gaining reward. So what is right and what is wrong is either determined by I'm going to get punished, right? I don't want to drive too fast, That's wrong because it's against the law, right? And I might get punished. Or gaining a reward. I should eat vegetables, and I know this is not a moral issue, right? But I should eat vegetables because I'll be rewarded for it. So this would apply to all kinds of thoughts by children that age. Should I take $1 from my mom's purse? Well, I'm going to get punished, so no, I shouldn't. Or if I see someone, like my sibling, taking $1 from my mom's purse, I should tell because I'll be rewarded for that behavior. So that would be a pre-conventional morality. Conventional morality involves a little bit more of a level of abstraction. It's not so much about whether you'll be punished and whether you'll get caught, but whether what you're doing is approved of by other people. So there's, again, sort of two sub-levels of this. The first being pleasing others, where in conventional morality, right and wrong is determined by what your parents think of it. So it's not so much you'll get punished for taking $1 from your mom's purse as my mom wouldn't want me to. I shouldn't do it because she wouldn't approve of it. She wouldn't think it was a good idea. If she knew, she'd be unhappy with me. So it's a little bit more of an abstraction, because with a younger child, the pre-conventional, if you know you're not going to get caught, there really isn't a reason not to do it. But with conventional, it doesn't matter whether you get caught. You know that it's wrong, according to other people. That can become a little bit more abstract as children move through the conventional phase to social or societal rules and laws. So you wouldn't speed because society says it's wrong. Not because you might get a ticket, but because it's agreed upon as a law. So right and wrong go from being determined by your family from like ages 9, 10, 11, as you get a little bit older, to being determined by societal rules. And then between adolescence, sometimes late adolescence, and into the 20s and adulthood is this concept of post-conventional morality, where you're no longer necessarily bound by what your parents' views or rewards and punishments, or even by the laws of society, but more by what you see as right, truth, justice, abstract ethical principles. So you're willing to respect the law within limits, but you understand it's not absolute. So you understand that speeding is wrong, and that, you know, pre-conventionally you might get in trouble. Conventionally, you'd be breaking the law. But post-conventionally, you might say, but it's okay to speed if I'm carrying my injured friend in the car and I'm trying to get them to the hospital. So you see these rules as important, but not absolute. You see them as something that there might be exceptions to. You might have a little footnote that says, well, not in this case. Also, you might start to reject some laws because you'd be following ethical principles of equity and justice. So you might know, for example, that it's wrong to block a highway, that it would be unsafe, that it would be against the law. The society says it's wrong, but you might say, well, I need to stand up for my particular group or my version of justice, and that's going to make it okay for me to break this law. So you see a lot of that with sort of passive resistance, right? With different kinds of protests where people are willing to break a law because they believe they're standing up for a higher ethical principle. One final note, though, that is Kohlberg stages. This person, Carol Gilligan, she believed that there were actually gender differences in the development of morality, and she criticized Kohlberg for saying what he's talking about, his stages of morality, really apply more directly to men, and that he was really researching more with men. And she believed that for women, the central moral problem wasn't who decides right and wrong, whether we should be able to decide it individually or if it's societally determined, but she believed the central moral problem for women was the conflict between self and other, and that women focus more on care than on justice. So her critics, of course, say she's stereotyping about women, that women are nurturing while men are logical and rational. But it's just an interesting critique of Kohlberg's theory. And that is the conclusion of the notes for this lesson.